Xian's death was confirmed. While the battle was still going on, the team did heard the notification of deducting 1 point. Zheng was still fantasizing this was another one of Xian's crazy schemes, but it was obviously not. Xian died. And in such a pathetic way of death. The wisest still makes a mistake in 1,000 contemplations. Or did he become tired of fighting on? Tired of chasing that almost imaginary 4th stage and chose death? Zheng sat in a lobby. He silently looked at the people in front of him. Xian's body was placed in the center. A whole day passed after the battle against the Uruk-hai army. Gandalf indeed arrived at dawn with 2,000 riders. Though what awaited them wasn't the swarm of Uruk-hai they imagined. People had already begun cleaning up the battlefield. The fortress was covered with the scars of war. However, it was the Uruk-hai corpses on the ground that caught their attention most than anything. That wasn't the aftermath of a battle. It was the scene of shredded flesh in a slaughterhouse. Men achieved victory due to Zheng's terrifying performance. The army cleaned up the battlefield and headed back to Helm's Deep for rest. Gandalf had a conversation with the rest of the movie characters. They decided to march toward Isengard at dawn of the second day. They had to defeat Saruman when he was at his weakest. 3 before midnight, Zheng woke up. The other 4 members of Team China immediately came to him. Everyone sat there without a word, even Cheng Xiao. Because Xian's body lay in front of them. Their gaze fixed on Zheng silently. He was the only core of the team after Xian's death. Zheng was the heart of Team China, connecting the people with differing personalities, values, and beliefs. He made these people into a team. There wouldn't be a Team China without him. Xian was the brain of the team. He gave everyone the belief of surviving even the most desperate dangers. It wasn't a trust toward him because his plans schemed both foes and friends. However, his wit was acknowledged by every person. As long as they stood on the same line in battle, they never worried about coming to an unsolvable situation. Unless he died. Which was what Team China were facing right now. They knew Team Celestial was in this battle. They knew Team East America was stronger than them, but they were never overly worried because Xian was there. His plans would save them from a wipe no matter how far behind they were. No one expected lose him even before encountering the other 2 teams. Their most important intellectual support was gone. Their strength made a breakthrough, but that wasn't a guarantee of rivaling the other 2 teams. What if the other teams had similar amount of strength? The silence lasted in the room until Cheng Xiao couldn't hold it. Xian sent Hao Tiao and the others off. Did he already know he was going to die back then? There might be a plan that he entrusted to the other group. F***ck. Zheng was enraged. He lifted Cheng Xiao and shouted. Plan. Plan your ass. He's dead. He's our comrade. Even though he had always schemed me. Even though I always wanted to know what he was planning. But I treated him as a comrade within my heart. He's someone I can entrust my back to. What do you think he is? A tool for the survival of Team China? Do you believe I will tear you apart? Cheng Xiao stared back without backing a step. He was taller than Zheng to begin with, so his presence seemed more intimidating than Zheng. He shouted. And what was Xian's original intention? He wanted for the team to survive, to get stronger. If you used the power of the 4th stage in the beginning, he wouldn't have died. Come kill me if you or F***ing shut up. Zheng slowly calmed down. He let go of Cheng Xiao's collar, then dropped to the chair, looking dejected. Cheng Xiao also calmed down. He took several deep breaths. Do what we ought to do. We still have to live. Didn't you survive by yourselves when Xian died before? F***ck, enough with the pointless talks, you should have been the one saying this as the leader. Zheng gave a bitterly smile. You're right to scold me, it's not that I didn't want to use that power, but I was scared. You saw that I was slaughtering Uruk-hai in a madness, but if you were next to me at the time, I would have done the same to you. I had no conscience of my own at the time. All my body wanted was to kill every living thing beside me or fall when I could no longer sustain the 4th stage. It has immense power, I can tear the Uruk-hai and even the Balrog apart, but... He paid no attention to everyone's expression and continued. Things have come to this point, but we still need to do what we ought to do. We will follow Gandalf to Isengard the next morning. If Xian had expected his death that early on and designated Hao Tian as his successor, we will have to trust him. Hao Tian will take his place from now on. According to their plan, they should have taken down Isengard by now. We will meet up with them. A leader's responsibility is to lead the team and survive. Yet, are you really dead? Zheng placed his carotid artery. It was cold and had no sign of blood flow. Then is Hao Tian's ability truly as strong as yours? In the woods not far from Isengard. Hao Tian's group hadn't assaulted Saruman yet. The Nemesis were only just waking up. They created 300 Nemesis that could all use battle chi. 50 of them could use explosive shot. The Nemesis were almost 4 meters in height and thrice the bulk of a normal person. It was almost certain each Nemesis could take on 50 Uruk-hai. The Uruk-hai turned Nemesis were much stronger than human ones. Zero stood on an area inside the woods by himself. He pulled out a piece of metallic plate, then opened it up. A while later, a voice came out from the plate. Zero, tell me what happened at the time and the situation during these 2 days in detail. The man's voice was sent directly into Zero's mind. Zero let out a sigh of relief. Xian gave him the item before the team split up. It was used to communicate over the mines, a more convenient phone. Nothing strange happened. We all heard the notification of deducting a point. None of us died, so it must have been someone in your group. However, Hao Tian didn't assault Saruman as we had planned. He began capturing Uruk-hai in larger numbers and turned them into nemesis. He still hasn't mentioned about the assault today. Zero said through his mind. Is that so? Get it? The voice continued. What do you think of Hao Tian's strength? Incredibly strong. Zero replied without hesitation. I can't believe a newbie can be this strong. His psychokinesis is very powerful. Almost nothing within 20 meters can harm him. Though if we are to kill him, he would not be able to defend against the Gauss sniper rifle, Wangxia's bombs, the Valkyrie, or even Campa's RPG. However, we need enough distance to use these weapons on him. In a close-range fight, we will lose. Oh, then what you have to do is... Campa, Wangxia, and Gondo proceed as planned. You have to find a time and leave the group. Head to the capital of Gondor, minus Tirith. You will see Zheng fighting another person. And you mission. This is basically the situation we are in. I won't initiate contact from now on. There's a time limit to my existence. According to Galadriel, I still have 20 days, then let's finish off Team Celestial in these 20 days. The voice faded. It was Xian's voice. Zero closed the metallic plate and put it back in his pocket. He walked toward the outer layer of the woods where Hao Tian and the other members of Team China were training the 300 Nemesis. Due to their time constraint, all 5 members of Team China, Gandalf, Aragorn, Legolas, Gimli, Theoden, and the remaining riders from their guerrilla warfare tactic headed out. The marshals who returned with Gandalf were initially worried about this group leaving because their king was part of the operation and their enemy was a white wizard. The marshals wanted to accompany the group. However, Theoden was a determined warrior himself. He refused them, then the group left immediately afterward. Furthermore, the existence of Zheng in this group would grant them safety. They only had to look out for hidden enemies. On the way, they encountered multiple waves of Uruk-hai who ran away during that battle. The Uruk-hai were a race famous for their brutality after all. The deserters were aggressive despite the loss they suffered. Seeing as Zheng's group had few in number, any wave of Uruk-hai totaling more than 500 attempted to attack them. There were a few smart ones that ran upon noticing Zheng in the group. The image he carved into them was terrifying. The slower thinking ones didn't become aware of the situation and charged at the group as they roared. Zheng then slaughtered them. He swung the blood off Tiger's soul and said, in a slightly helpless tone. This is the reason I didn't want to enter the 4th stage of the unlock mode. The enhancement from the 4th stage isn't temporary. It actually alters DNA. Every time I exit the unlock mode, part of the DNA that altered in the process never change back. It happens every time and my strength grows with each change. To give an analogy, this is like the monster with the golden mask. Only that he could alter his DNA at will. That would be mid 4th stage and he had no limit to his alterations. Which broke the balance of his DNA and overloaded his body. So he died consuming himself at the fight. The other members were shocked. Hung asked. So, you are going to grow stronger with each time you enter the 4th stage. How strong can you get? Like during last night? Perhaps even stronger. Zheng replied. But at the same time it alters my consciousness. Whenever I see Uruk-hai now, I can't contain the intent to kill them and the desire to kill every last one of them. The others frowned since it was Zheng who said these words. It might be insulting, but Zheng was a nice guy type of person to them. He wasn't too soft-hearted, but he was peaceful when treating normal people who had no malicious intent. They had never seen him so cold-blooded. The influence from the 4th stage was huge. Since the group left, Team China naturally wouldn't leave Xian's body in Helm's Deep. They all wanted to bury his body back in the real world. There was no time to cremate the body, so the plan was to carry him on a horse then put him into the storage bag once they meet Zero. Little did they know that Gandalf had a bag similar to their storage bag. It opened to a piece of linen. The linen covered Xian's body then shrunk to a small bag. When Gandalf was putting it back into his pocket, Legolas asked to safekeep it instead with the reason that magic using might destroy the bag in the upcoming battle against Saruman. The group marched toward Isengard with nothing holding back their pace anymore. All the Uruk-hai they encountered on the way were slain. Each person had 2 horses to rotate through. The nightmare didn't need to rest. And so, it took them less than 3 days to reach Isengard. They passed over a few hills and a forest. Orthan finally came in sight. It was a man-built tower hundreds of meters tall. At the foot of the tower was a land of water and mud. The water and mud splashed the exterior of the tower. It seemed that the Ents had paved their way through. They followed the road ahead. A few minutes later, they saw a hobbit enjoying beer and taking a smoke. As the group approached, the hobbit yelled and greeted them. There were many holes under the water, so they had to walk slowly. One misstep and they would fall into one of the holes. Merry said loudly as they came near. Haha. Welcome to Isengard. He pointed to the tower behind. Gimli, sitting behind Legolas, yelled back. Hey, you little bastard. We were fighting with our lives in Helm's Deep and you are enjoying food here and a smoke. How terrible of you. Merry laughed. These are my spoils. Spoils the Ents rewarded me for fighting alongside them. Oh Gimli, the beer is delicious. Gimli swallowed. Gandalf said. Hobbit, where are the Ents who defeated the Isengard army? Why are you the only one here? Merry replied. Can't help it. They said I am a burden to carry along. So, they left me here to wait for you and the people of Rohan. Why else would they give me so much of the spoils? I would have starved to death without them. Gandalf continued to ask. Where are them? To Minas Tirith. Merry slowly said. Neos convinced the Ents to head to Minas Tirith with them. The Ents move slow so they didn't wait for you. You just have to hurry and catch up to them. They went east along the woods and said we would meet in Minas Tirith. Gandalf was rather surprised. Few people knew about the personality of the Ents. The Ents normally wouldn't even bother to speak, and not to mention participating in a war. A meeting with them meant several days of time. Somehow, someone managed to convince them to help the human kingdom. It was as rare as the sun rising from the west. Neos had his ways. Now wasn't the time to discuss further. The White Wizard was still nearby. Gandalf rode the horse forward. The others met eyes and followed him to the tower. Dead corpses were floating throughout the road. Countless Uruk-hai were killed and drowned in the battle. Saruman's army was gone. He was the only one left. Zheng had Cheng Xiao take Merry on the horse. He asked. Is Saruman still alive? Did any battle happen before you come? Merry shook his head. No. We attacked Saruman in surprise. He didn't discover us approaching. He attempted to use magic on us, but the Ents used a magic that linked their power to the woods. The green lights blocked off Saruman's magic. No battle took place before? Did something happen to Zero's party? Doesn't seem like it. We haven't received another notification of death. Was it some other trouble they got into? Or is Hao Tian acting mysterious like Xian always did? Is he scheming something? Zheng pondered to himself. He followed Gandalf to the tower. Everyone reached the foot of the tower. Gandalf said. Saruman. You have been defeated. Come out and see me. His voice started in normal volume, then a second later, the volume grew so loud that even someone up on the tower could hear. Saruman showed himself on the balcony after a few seconds. He laughed with a hint of insanity. The wizard had lost himself. Gandalf. You lost. It's you who lost. Do you really believe I will lose? Haha. The Dark Lord has returned. The One Ring returned to its owner. Humans have no power of rivaling Sauron. We won. We won. Saruman roared. He raised a black and red crystal ball on his hand. A scene faded onto the crystal. A pair of flaming eyes formed a humanoid figure in armor. The image zoomed in the figure's finger. It was wearing a golden ring, the One Ring. Team Celestial, a team formed by the leaders of various teams. Everyone unlocked to at least the second stage. And secondly, the members came from different countries. Each person had their own set of perspectives. The member didn't admire each other in the team. Though they were all strong enough individually that no mishap happened to the team. Casualties were rare when the whole team were leaders unless they encountered a change of plot by God. But they had the advantage of sharing the risk over each person at those situations. When strength reached a certain degree, a normal change of plot wasn't enough to kill them. Since there were Celestials, there were Devils. The first time Team Celestial ran into Team Devil, Team Celestial had 2 people in the third stage and the overall team strength was strong. One of the third stage members had obtained a S rank enhancement. They chased Team Devil throughout the movie world. It took Team Devil great effort to escape. After that, they began to underestimate Team Devil. Several movies later, a blonde young man joined Team Celestial and the team's situation changed. This man was Adam. He didn't show off his strength and kept a calm expression. 2 movies passed, then the members began to realize he could foretell many of the events. Since these members were capable enough to become leaders, they were aware of the existence of people with supernatural abilities in the real world. For a while, they thought Adam had the ability of premonition. Then, they began to consult him. Adam didn't hold back with any of their requests. The team reaped large bonuses in the movie worlds. The only Chinese member even became a disciple of the cultivators from the mountain of Ziu. Then, Team Celestial encountered Team Devil again. However, the battle this time went back and forth as they ran and chased each other. The leader of Team Devil was a Chinese man with a pair of bat wings. He took on 7 members of Team Celestial by himself and destroyed the body of their second strongest member, the cultivator Luo Yinglong. And he beat their strongest member, Song Tian, into fatal condition. Furthermore, he killed 2 members from Team Celestial. If it wasn't for the calculations from Adam, the team might have been wiped right there. Team Devil only lost 2 weak members. Team Celestial weren't the only team with someone scheming from behind. Such a person also existed in Team Devil. However, Adam was hiding from the dark and managed to win by half a step. He brought Team Celestial back to God's dimension. 6 members remained after the fight. Team Celestial realized stronger people existed at places where they couldn't see and began to stay low profile. They also realized Adam wasn't a fortune teller but someone with capable intelligence and scheming ability. There was no guide in Team Celestial, but he gradually became the leader of the team. The thing Team Celestial wanted most was annihilate Team Devil. As players who reached the second and third stages and gathered from Adam's analysis of the realm, they knew that only one team would be able to return to the real world in the end. If Team Devil were to continue growing, their hope of returning was near non-existent. The second wish they had was to kill the demon's original before he reached the same stage as the clone. It's easy to speculate this since the beginning. They were both inside the borders of China, so they entered Team China. My efforts of setting up the scheme over several movies didn't go to waste. And finally, in this 5-way team battle, the scheme is closing up. Even with Chu Xian's intelligence, he shouldn't be able to survive after falling into such a long scheme. However, Adam muttered to himself in front of two people. They were a man and a woman. The woman had blonde hair. She was the one that jumped on the desert when they first entered the world. Her name was Lena. The man was a Songtian, a mixed blood and part Chinese. Adam assigned the two of them to follow him. The other three members of Team Celestial spread out at different areas of this world. They were to search for bonus missions by themselves since few living beings in this world could harm them. Songtian looked like a reliable man. He sat in front of Adam and asked. However, was his death too unexpected? Adam nodded. Correct. Chu Xian's death was too unexpected. Even though we saw his death through Luo Yinglong's phone, but the way he died seemed like a joke. Yet, if he wanted to feign death in such a laughable way, he wouldn't be Xian. That man won't be able to come up with such a knave scheme. So, I thought his death was fake. However, the message was they indeed lost a point. Which means he actually died. There are two possibilities I can think of. 1. Xian died. He wanted to die so he chose to stand there. We are similar after all. Or 2, he didn't die. He exchanged an ability of enhancement or found a method to exist in the same way as Luo Yinglong's core that allows him to revive after returning to God's dimension, while the death still deducts a point. Both possibilities are plausible. We know the location of the two parties of Team China. One is heading to Mordor and the other to Gondor. The party going to Gondor is their main force. The one going to Mordor is composed of sci-fi weapon users. They basically pose no threat. Although the sniper with a gauze rifle may be useful, our defensive items can totally block 1 or 2 shots. He will die after the first shot. There's no need to worry about them. What we need to consider is the main force that's going to Gondor and Xian who might still be alive. Adam looked at them without emotion. He continued to mutter. This is an overt scheme. Whether his death was real or fake, it stopped the next step of my plan. I originally planned to send Songtian and Luo Yinglong to snipe the demon. The two of you together should be fine even against the demon. He has only just entered the beginning of the 4th stage. He has the strength but lacks the control. However, Xian's death means that Songtian can't go attack the demon. You are stronger than Luo Yinglong but you don't have the ability to revive as long as a core survives. If Xian faked his death, I fear for the outlook of the battle at Minas Tirith. You can't go. I will send 2 others to assist Luo Yinglong. The battle at Minas Tirith is extremely important and it is the only chance we have to kill the demon. Songtian paused for a moment. The only chance? It can't be. There is still more to come after the battle. They must come to Mordor or they won't be able to return. Can't we kill them all after they arrive at Mordor? Adam shook his head. That's the reason for Xian to choose this time to execute his scheme. This isn't the original movie. They entered the world much earlier than us and obtained the influence from the Alliance of Man. They will grasp these influences firmly in their hands after the battle at Minas Tirith. I don't have to analyze it for you. Just think about the movie and you can see the strong forces in this world. The Rohan Riders, Gondor Infantry, Elves, Ents, and the Army of the Dead. If Xian is still alive, these forces will march at Mordor once Man wins the battle at Minas Tirith. Do you think the half-orcs can defend? Even with the Ringwraiths and Sauron, it will be many times more difficult to kill the demon. Incredible overt scheme. It forced us to hold back at the battle in Minas Tirith. And if we were to go all in, we must be prepared for a wipe. The unknown is always the most terrifying. I am behind by half a step no matter he's still alive or not. Lena suddenly said. Things can't be so bad. Doesn't your plan still have the advantage of scheming their other party? Once those 4 members of Team China died, what can they do in Minas Tirith even with Chu Xian? Don't you always say that once strength reaches a certain height, all wits are laughable? We are many times stronger than Team China at the current moment. I say Yinglong can kill them all by himself. You are too careful. Adam looked at her calmly until she blushed. I am not speaking for that idiot, even though he's my boyfriend. I am just speaking the truth. I know. Adam closed his eyes. I feel I missed a step in my calculation. But what is it? Even if Xian recognized that Hao Tian entered the realm because of the information I sent back to the real world, even if he realized Hao Tian's entrance was all too sudden, even if he was aware of the disadvantageous position he was in by being in the open while I was in the shadows and Hao Tian was in the open, what does he have to overturn the situation? What card does he have that can rival us? What is Xian hiding? Or is there someone in Team China that's a threat to us? What is it? What Xian was hiding wasn't always so important. At least Zui Kong didn't seem to care when he looked at Adam with a smile. Adam appeared to care about Zui Kong. Songtian stepped in between them. A moment of silence followed between the two parties. Adam opened his mouth. Zhao Zui Kong, when my team went to take the ring, you had already taken it. The biggest influence in this world actually fell into your hands. Although I don't want this to happen, but you have decided to compete with us in this world, correct? Zui Kong's smile didn't change. He didn't express his position and looked at Songtian. You also reached the 4th stage? Early phase, how unexciting. If you can't control yourself, just allow yourself to kill like a wild beast. Death is a beauty of its own. Forcefully suppressing your killing desires twists what God has bestowed upon you. Songtian also didn't express himself as he remained calm. At least I will be able to fight with you monsters. The future of humans can't be decided by you monsters. Zui Kong shrugged, but he seemed to be enjoying this. Adam waved his hand. Let's get to business. I will give you a choice. Either we abandon Team China and kill you right now, or you leave Mortar and don't appear in front of me until the battle at Mortar is over. You can come back no matter who wins. Zui Kong raised his head and pondered. After a while, he smiled at the three people in front. I choose neither. My future should be seized by my hands. You want me to go against my heart by just saying a line? Do you really think I will allow this to happen? His eyes gradually became sharp. Song Tian felt an extraordinary killing intent from Zui Kong. An antique-looking Chinese broadsword appeared in his hand the next moment. It was unknown where the sword came from. It radiated a sense of chill and forced Zui Kong's eyes to fall on him. Zui Kong gave Song Tian a good look, then said, "Good, too bad I am not interested in ripened fruits." A dagger appeared in his hand. It was small and thin. When looked at from the side, the dagger was translucent as a piece of glass. Song Tian backed up half a step as soon as Zui Kong had the dagger in hand, like he was facing a mighty foe. He held the sword with both hands, getting ready to attack at full force once Zui Kong moves. Adam suddenly said, "The person you're interested in, is it Zhao Yinkong? What if we keep her alive or hand her to you?" Zui Kong stopped. He gave Adam a meaningful look, then accepted pleasantly. "Good, just like you said then. I won't come to Mortar before the battle is over. Oh, and save a few newbies from the other teams. You can take the rest." He leaped backward into the woods and quickly disappeared. Song Tian loosened up once Zui Kong was gone. He was still holding onto his sword and was breathing intensely. This psychopath reached the same height as his clone. It feels helpless that these monsters are stronger than us pure humans. Is this the advantage of being a mixed blood? He forgot that he was a mixed blood as he said this. Lena felt confused and asked, "What's the point of this, Adam? Don't you think that was a waste of time? You called the psychopath over to ask a few questions and almost got into a fight. What are you thinking?" "Confirmation," Adam said. "I need to confirm what Xian is hiding. Obviously, it isn't Zhao Zui Kong. Then what is it? Something that Xian believes can turn the tide of battle, enough to let him fake his death. What exactly is this thing? If the situation becomes dire, we will have to abandon Anavia and Lekala. Luo Yinglong won't die anyway, and you two are next to me. We won't get wiped in the worst case scenario." Anavia and Lekala were a Caucasian man and black man of Team Celestial. However, it seemed that these two members had a rather low position in the team. Song Tian and Lena didn't argue with Adam's decision. "Then we will stop here. Notify Anavia and Lekala to help Luo Yinglong kill Zheng Jia during the battle at Minas Tirith. At the same time, reduce the human alliance force as much as possible. Mortar winning the battle is the best result. Xian, let me see your reaction." While Team Celestial made their decision, a slab of ice floated up from a swamp in the marshes not too far away. The ice cracked. A naked man jumped out at once, then he fell on his hands and knees and grasped for air. A long time passed before he stood up. However, he still seemed feeble. He fell multiple times trying to get up. Then his hands reached for the ice slab and climbed. He was barely standing. The man raised his head and shouted, "I am not dead. Just wait. Whether you are Team Celestial or Team East America, you just wait. You are no heroes for sneak attacking. Wait for the wrath of my ice age." Arg. The mud and water beside him froze as he shouted, then they exploded. "Neos, what are you thinking about?" The air in the Lord of the Rings world was extremely clean. There was no pollution. Once night fell, they could see the countless stars as they raised their heads. Even the dimmest starlight was visible to the naked eye. Surprisingly, there was also a Milky Way in this world. It was like a silver ribbon that hung across the sky, beautiful and dazzling. Neos lay on a boulder and gazed at the starry sky. Somehow, he seemed doleful. Aya, who was paying attention to him, couldn't help but asked. Neos rubbed his brows. "I don't know why, but I feel that this path might lead to a great danger if we continue." Aya was surprised. "Then are we not going to Minas Tirith? The Ents can find their way there anyway. There's no need for us to go." Neos smiled bitterly. "It's not so simple. The Ents will become suspicious. We are the ones who guided them there, and if we run away, they will not give all they have to save the human alliance. Secondly, the battle at Minas Tirith is important. If we win the battle, the journey to Mortar won't be as dangerous because we will have obtained enough influence to overwhelm Mortar. Furthermore, if Team Celestial and Team East America wants to fight us, they are certain to send their members to Minas Tirith. There is no escape. We must head to Minas Tirith. Instead of running away then head to death in Mortar, we might as well give what we have now. If we manage to arrive at Mortar, we will have enough to threaten them. Our team is very weak." Snow didn't look like she understood. Aya and Richard fell into silence. A while later, Neos broke the silence. "It's ironic, but our hope lies in Team China. So, we must be there in Minas Tirith. Else if Team China falls, we will lose our advantage to surviving. Sigh. Even if there's danger ahead, we must attend this battle." Team Africa saviors weren't at a good spot either. The road ahead of Team China without Xian was once again clouded. The successor of Xian that they expected didn't come. Furthermore, the other 4 members of Team China, the newbies, and the veterans of the other teams disappeared. None of the 5 members remaining were the strategic types. In the end, All they had was Zheng analyzing the situation through simulation. I still haven't fully grasped the fourth stage. I am only at the early phase, so the simulation is at 50 to 60%. I don't know why I have never been able to simulate Xian. Analyzing at half of Honglu's strength is really suboptimal, Zheng said to the others. After a while of analysis and no conclusions were reached, they had no choice but to follow the development of the original plot, head to Minas Tirith and help the Human Alliance win the battle. This was all they could do now. Among the 5 teams, some were on the verge of being wiped, some were having fun in the world, some were scheming each other, and some were worried. However, as the plot continued to advance, all the teams placed their eyes at the battle coming up in Minas Tirith. This battle would shake the world. 2 days passed since Zheng's group returned to Edoras. Their only reward from the journey to Isengard was killing Saruman, who had gone insane. Such a famed wizard died to Legolas' 3-arrow explosive shot and Hung's charged shot. He didn't even use a barrier. At that stage, he was merely an old man. The tower began to collapse after Saruman's death. This differed from the movie plot. Gandalf told them it was Saruman's magic that supported the tower and that it would fall to the ground upon Saruman's death. It's such a pity to the items inside. According to what you said, a wizard should have a rich collection. The treasures of a white wizard could rival that of a kingdom. I wonder how many energy stones and other magical items are in there. Zheng said to Gandalf. Gandalf was rather embarrassed because to him, Team China didn't necessarily have to participate in the war against Mordor. His recruitment of them as mercenaries dragged the team into the war. The energy stones he had given them were obviously of too little value for what they had done. Yet, he was not nearly as rich as Saruman since he just became a white wizard. Gandalf said. Once the war is over, I will try my best to compensate you. Don't worry. Your teammate's death won't be in vain. Zheng answered without paying attention. He was thinking of finding a time to return to the Lord of the Rings world to dig up the items buried beneath Isengard. The tower could collapse but the things inside wouldn't disappear. The treasures were still buried there. Nothing much to be said about Isengard. The group returned to Edoras. The villagers of course cheered. This was a victory over a battle that was expected to destroy the kingdom. Furthermore, Theoden's consciousness returned and he began bringing back the exiled riders. The number of riders increased to 7,000 in just under a week. Even without counting the injured and sick, there were 5,000 capable elite riders. This was a strong army in this world, enough to pose threat to the half-orc army of Mordor. Tell me. Theoden shouted. Why should we ride to the aid of those who did not come to ours? What do we owe Gondor? The others had no words. The players couldn't understand, but to the people of this world, allies must fight when the time came. If the other party broke the promise, it was generous already to not break all their bonds. Fighting for such people wouldn't happen so easily. Theoden was only exercising his right. Gandalf said in an unconvincing tone. Yet if Gondor falls, Rohan will be next. No. Theoden stared at him in seriousness. Our dignity is more important. If Rohan forgets the heartless that Gondor showed and go aid them, our kingdom will no longer have any dignity. We will not aid them unless the beacons of Gondor are lit. Let them tell us by themselves, that they are on the brink of death and need the blood of Rohan to save them. Or else, our riders will not leave even if Mordor raze Minas Tirith to the ground. This was Theoden's answer. Gandalf had no choice but to ride to Minas Tirith ahead of everyone. He planned to persuade ruling steward of Gondor and have him light the beacons. The forces of men would then become one. He didn't bring Aragorn along because Denethor was still in control of Gondor. Aragorn going would incite unexpected consequences. You must come to Minas Tirith by another road. Gondor's final force lies there. Seize that power, you will what it means to be the king of men. Planning to have Merry sneak in and light the beacons when he fails to convince Denethor? Isn't this the same as the original plot? Zheng simulated Honglu's thinking process. The battle at Minas Tirith was of utmost importance. It affected how the team would obtain influence in the remaining time in this world. He had no choice but to accompany Gandalf. We need to split here. Lan and I will head to Gondor. We have to protect Gandalf and Merry, and secondly, to help Gondor achieve victory. These aren't the key points. The problem lies in the attacks from the other 2 teams, which we need to be on guard. Although I can't control the 4th stage, it's still extremely powerful. I can pose threat to the other 2 teams by heading to Gondor. Yinkong, Hung, and Cheng Xiao go with Aragorn. The army of the dead in the movie are strong. You have to help them obtain the oath at all cost. Of course, put your lives before anything. Zheng said in a serious manner. Cheng Xiao laughed. Don't worry. As long as I can still breathe, I will protect Yinkong. As to Hung, go back to where you came from. I won't protect men. Zheng grabbed him by the collar and lifted him up. I need you to live, not to see you standing in front of women again. Live on. This is more important than anything. More important than anything, live on. We will all live on together. Cheng Xiao couldn't help but nodded. After Zheng released his collar, he murmured about him, tore his shirt. Though they could see a hint of seriousness in his eyes. Well then, meet in Minas Tirith. Let us all live on. Zheng pulled the lead rope. The nightmare stood up then ran off. Zheng and Lan followed closely after Gandalf's white horse toward Minas Tirith and slowly disappeared from the other members. The nightmare and the white horse could reach Minas Tirith in 3 days. All 4 people were quiet on the road. All that was on their mind was hurry to Minas Tirith and light the before Mordor sent out its army. So the riders of Rohan would assemble in the shortest time and aid Gondor. 2 days later, Zheng suddenly asked Gandalf loudly. Do you still have the spatial bag on you? Or have you put it on Legolas? Gandalf was focused on riding the horse. It took him a while to register the question. I gave it to Legolas and he seemed to have forgotten to give the bag back to me. Is there anything wrong? Zheng paused. He shook his head and said. No. Nothing. Maybe I was overthinking it. Lan, who was in his arms, asked. What happened? Did you guess something? Just a little feeling. I feel that Xian wouldn't die so easily. There was a notification, but considering his calculations, this might be another one of his schemes. He schemed every one of us and made us his chess pieces. And possibly made himself a piece of his calculation. I feel that he might be alive now that I am not seeing his dead body. It simply feels. Zheng smiled bitterly. He pulled the lead rope and the nightmare ran faster. Anyway, if he's not dead, something interesting is going to be bound to happen. There's no point to keep pondering. If he actually died, I have to actively seek more challenges. Or else our team will no longer has any hopes. While Zheng and Gandalf headed to Gondor, the people in Rohan didn't waste any time. Everyone trained themselves. The two people whose weapons were unbounded adjusted to the lighter weight of the weapons and the true powers contained within them. Excalibur was more than just its sharpness. Its attacks ignored battle chi. It could annihilate any layers formed by battle chi instantly. The light blade from Tiger's soul would probably shatter upon contact too. However, Yinkong still hadn't discovered the noble phantasm that Zheng described to her. Hung also discovered interesting uses of his bow. He went to Legolas for help. When he saw Legolas, Legolas was seeing a rider in black rode off. The rider was slender and wasn't wearing any armor. His horse headed out the city. Who's that? Why does he look so familiar? Hung muttered. Legolas seemed surprised by his voice. He laughed awkwardly. A messenger that brings victory. Zheng's group had been on the road for 3 days without sleep. Zheng and Gandalf were physically fit enough to sustain the strain, but Lan and Merry had no way of keeping up. The two of them fell asleep leaning against the others' backs. They barely had any rests during this journey. Dawn of the 4th day came. A white city appeared through the morning sunlight. The capital of Gondor, most magnificent city of men, minus Tirith, city of kings. It is the symbol of human regime. If the forces of Mordor breached the city, the end of men would be near. Gandalf sighed. He patted Shadowfax and it ran toward the city. Zheng followed right behind Gandalf. The guards on the wall were excited at the sight of a large silvery horse followed by a skeleton horse. The White Wizard had a high reputation in this world. Saruman's fall from grace lowered his reputation, but the majority of men still believed in him as the savior. In contrast to the White Wizard, the guards were more familiar with and feared the skeleton horse. It was the mount of the ringwraiths that couldn't be replicated. Seeing the White Wizard being chased by the ringwraith, a group of archers hurried up the city wall from their camps in a commotion. The misunderstanding took an hour to dissolve. Zheng dismounted from the nightmare and handed it to the troops from Gondor. They finally believed that the White Wizard killed a ringwraith and seized the nightmare as spoil. No one would believe anyone could kill a ringwraith with human bodies. Feeling helpless, Gandalf laughed. The people of Gondor are stubborn as this. They will follow through the end on things they decided on, whether it be good or bad, as long as it is the path they want to walk. Zheng was rather inexperienced riding a war horse. The Gondor troops gave him the war horse after taking the nightmare away. He wasn't worried about not getting it back though. Normal human troops couldn't stop him if he were to use brute force to get it back. Furthermore, Gandalf wouldn't let this happen. Let's go and see the steward. What followed was a narration of the plot. Anyway, the group went to see the steward, but Denethor didn't wish for the assistance of Rohan because he knew the heir of Gondor, Aragorn, was there. Gondor returning to the hands of the king was not what he wanted to see. It would leave him with no place in this kingdom. Thus, Denethor refused Gandalf's advice to light the beacons. Foolish. Truly foolish. Gondor is his, but what would he get once Mordor razes it into ground? Nothing. Only death would await him. Why does he not return the kingdom to the king and leave himself a good reputation? Gandalf marched out from the throne room. He walked to the courtyard. There he could see Mordor beyond the mountains. It was covered in red as if the air was burning. Gandalf looked in downcast. We have lost. The end of men is near. Sauron has returned. The One Ring has returned to him. And men are still fighting with themselves for that elusive authority. With such an army, and such regime, how can we defeat the Dark Lord? We lost. Zheng patted him on the shoulder. Don't give up. We made it through so many difficulties and battles already. We won't lose to a worthless steward. We have the riders of Rohan. We have the Ents on their way. We have a group of allies. The elves will aid us when Sauron comes back. Or they would have to run. Gandalf took a deep breath. We will follow through our plan. Merry. Merry was gazing at the red sky. The sight was beautiful yet peculiar. As he turned his head around, he saw 3 pairs of eyes fixed on him. A bad feeling arose, as if he had boarded a pirate ship. Finally, the beacons are lit. A young man with black hair sat on top a snowy mountain. He was breathing rhythmically. He looked down on the mountain below. The beacons at the peak of the it were lit. The light was in view to people on the other mountain. And then a second mountain lit their beacons. The lights came on one after another until they reached the mountains far, far away. Well then, is the battle at Minas Tirith going to commence now? The young man smiled, then he laughed aloud. He spoke as though talking to himself. Zhao Zui Kong, there's nothing you can say to stop me now. *CKU. Wait until I reach Jindan, Gold Core, I won't fear you even if you unlock the 4th stage. I will kill you and your clone and that demon. Xiaoshan, cultivation, is the strongest power. Switching away from the wild young man. When the light of the beacons reached Edoras, Theoden was decisive at agreeing to send his army to Gondor. As a person in an authoritative position, he knew the two kingdoms were interdependent of each other. The riders of Rohan could not hold out against the forces of Mordor by themselves. Their only choice was to unite with the Gondor infantry and fight the Mordor army together. This is an unfortunate news, but I must inform you. Theoden listened to a scout and his expression became burdened. I sent several scouts to Gondor prior to the battle at Helm's Deep. 1. To request aid, and 2. To check if the Mordor forces have begun their attack. Our scouts returned with information of what they saw. The bad news is we will be facing against an army of 100,000 half-orcs, orcs, and trolls. This army is beyond anything we imagined, beyond the evil forces in the War of the Last Alliance. We have only 5,000 riders. This is all we have. Inside the Golden Hall, Theoden mustered his riders without a moment of hesitation. And when the scout came back with the message, the numbers crushed their confidence at once. This wasn't the real world. Not one war in the history of Middle-earth had such a large evil force gathered together. If that's the case, we will seek new allies. A voice came in from outside the Golden Hall. The people in the room turned their attention and saw a cloaked figure walked in. He took off his hood, revealing his identity. The man was Elrond, Lord of Rivendell, and the wielder of one of the 3 elven rings. All people aside from the 3 members of Team China bowed. Elrond said. Sauron obtained the One Ring once again. His power has returned. He's as powerful as before, yet the alliance became weak. Men only have one heir to Isildur. The elven rings are losing their power, forcing us to leave Middle-earth. For men to survive, Aragorn, you must seek new forces. Aragorn's smile was bitter. There are none. The Ents have set out. The riders of Rohan are ready. The infantries of Gondor are out of my control. The elves are leaving as the powers of the 3 rings fade. We have no more allies. No. There is an army that has been waiting for 1,000 years. Elrond revealed a sword under his cloak. The sword glowed in a silvery light without activating it with battle chi. It looked like a silver mirror. Reforged from the shards of Narsil. A sword that can only be used by the heir of Isildur. Use it to prove your bloodline. Elrond paused and said in a serious tone. Seek those who dwell in the mountain. They have been waiting for this over 1,000 years. This is the only army that can negate our difference in number and change the tide of battle. The mountain? Aragorn paused. His face turned pale as he muttered. Murderers. Traitors. You would call upon them to fight? They believe in nothing. They answer to no one. Elrond shouted. They will answer to the king of Gondor. This is your army. Gimli asked Legolas, seeing that Aragorn was hesitating. What's the matter? Why does it seem like he fears the army? Not fear but anger. Legolas sighed. That army pledged their loyalty to the king of Gondor, but they abandoned their oath when they were most needed. The blood of Isildur was nearly lost. Aragorn became the only heir to remain. They aren't people of the living. They are deceased men cursed by Isildur. Only when they fulfill their oath will they be forgiven and rest in peace. Although Aragorn, Legolas, and Gimli were unclear how they really felt, they still decided to head to the mountain immediately. Andúril will save them from being killed by the dead even if they fail to gain control of the army. The 3 members of Team China accompanied them. They knew the strength of the army of the dead. In the movie, it was this army that brought victory to the battle at Minas Tirith. It was also the reason Zheng left them behind, and to protect the 3 movie characters. It would be good if we have extra energy stones. This bow can focus energy on the string. You didn't see it when Legolas used my bow yesterday. He gathered life energy on the string, then it formed into thin arrows. These arrows increased the area of impact by up to 10 folds. That's effectively turning the bow into a shotgun. Hung said with excitement. The road they crossed was bleak. There were barely any trees in sight. Which in turn brought down their emotion. Hung and Cheng Xiao began talking in turns to break the dullness. Waiting for Yin Kong to speak up by herself was like waiting for a donut to fall from the sky after all. Cheng Xiao picked his nose. Aren't you scared of ghosts? I heard your guts are small. Hung blushed and defended himself. I am not. I am just terrified of blood and being beaten due to psychological issue. I am not scared of ghosts. Cheng Xiao laughed. Hee hee. Speaking big now. Don't get scared so much that you can stand when they come. That means something happened in your past and left the issue in your heart. I have a cure for your issue. Hung was overjoyed and said aloud. What cure? How do you cure my problem? You aren't lying, are you? How can it be? We are brothers, Cheng Xiao laughed out. However, Hung felt something was off. You just have to bathe in blood every day. Then tear apart 10 half-orcs or other humanoids. I promise you will be as fearless as Zheng in less than half a year. Haha. Cheng Xiao laughed. *CKU. Hung cursed at him. He went back to his bow. The metallic bow was extremely stylish and powerful. Much more so than the Sirius he owned. His biggest regret was not knowing the name and origin of the bow. As they talked, they reached an entrance in the mountain. Numerous skulls the entrance. The skulls had open mouths and a terrified look. Hieroglyphs were carved on the rocks in blood. The way is shut. It was made by those who were dead, and the dead keep it. The way is shut. Legolas, read the hieroglyphs. Gimli said loudly. What does it mean? Aragorn didn't reply. He bit his teeth then charged in. Legolas hesitated for a moment and followed, leaving Gimli and the members of Team China standing behind. Gimli turned to the other three. They weren't scared though, since they knew the plot. They also ran in, and so Gimli was the only person standing there. A chill wind blew over. He shivered then shouted. Wait for me. Wait. He also entered the paths of the dead. It was pitch black inside the paths of the dead. They all followed closely behind Aragorn, who had the torch. It felt as though the path was leading to the underworld. A unique sensation crept up to them. They felt they were lost. The light from the torch was wavering in front, yet they could not see Aragorn. Yin Kong felt she entered an endless corridor. There was no boundaries in this corridor, and time was out of her senses. It had the same feeling as the transportation that happened when leaving and returning to God's dimension. It was as if a long time had passed, yet at the same time it was also an instant. Yin Kong, wake up. Aren't you scared of getting sneak attack sleeping so deep? Little clumsy. A gentle and soft voice sounded next to her ear. She opened her eyes abruptly and jumped up. Then she saw a man with a smile standing in front of her. He was a handsome man with long hair, much taller than Yin Kong. His eyes was that of a big brother looking at his sister. Zhao Zui Kong. Where is this? Yin Kong was shocked. Her hands reached for Excalibur wrapped in a piece of cloth on her bag. However, she reached nothing. As she began her second attempt, she stopped. Yin Kong frowned. What am I doing? At Zuikangage, Nyizen, where is this place? Zui Kong said with a gentle smile. It's our training ground. Hurry up. Everyone's waiting in ahead. We are going to hunt a few black bears today. We will have to depend on your speed. Let's go. They are all waiting ahead. Following his voice, the images of the environment became vivid. This was the border of a forest. Yin Kong was lying on a grassy field just then. Zui Kong began walking toward the forest as he finished talking. Yin Kong lifted her foot. Yet, as she was about to take the step, she took her foot back. She lowered her head and said, Zuikangage, I can't go to where you are going. But there's a question I want to ask you. Zui Kong turned his back around in a surprise, but his smile was still gentle. Go ahead. As long as I can answer it. Will you always be the brother in my memory? Yin Kong asked, her head still lowing down. Zui Kong paused in confusion. He walked over to Yin Kong and gently wiped the tear by the corner of her eyes. If you are not coming to us, then take good care of yourself. I will always be your brother. Never going to change. Yin Kong bit the tip of her tongue. She felt her mind stop for a moment, then the scene in front changed. It was still dark, but she could make out a faint image. She was standing on the edge of a cliff. Its depth was unknown. If she just took one more step, she would have fallen into this abyss. However, before she recovered from the situation, she saw a person to the side. Hung was soaked in sweat with his back facing the cliff. If he just backed one more step, he would fall into this abyss. Yin Kong was 7 meters away from him. That shocked her and she immediately ran at him. Hung felt burning heat and pain throughout his body. What was this? What happened to him? Right, he was going home with Yan Wei, the woman he loved the most. Hung opened his eyes with great effort. He saw a man with a blurry face clung onto her body. She was struggling. Next to him was 3 men beating at him. He felt a violent pain with each punch. Blood was flowing out from his mouth and ears. Right, the rough Ians caught me. They are beating me. They want to take her away, the thoughts came to his mind. A punch landed on his eye and he felt the world became painted in red. It was the color of blood. The violent pain also registered from the bruises to his brain. It was as though these people transformed into his alcoholic father. Punch after punch, kick after kick, filling his body with bruises, beating him until his mouth and nose bleeds. No, I am scared. These blood. They are still beating me. Hung covered his head and tried to avoid their attacks. However, the beating was like coming from every direction. Soon, there was more blood on his body, trying to dye his clothes red. Hung kept backing away. He backed 2 steps, then he couldn't take another one. Because he saw Yan Wei was being further and further away from him. Run. Hung, leave me and run. I know you are scared of blood and being beaten. Leave me and run. They can't catch you if you take a few more steps. Yan Wei suddenly yelled while she struggled. Hung's conscience was urging him to run. The fear of being beaten was near breaking him down. However, he felt as though he had forgotten something. It was a determination that kept him standing in place, kept him from backing another step despite the beating he was getting. Run. Why aren't you running? Didn't you say you will always listen to me? I told you to run. Why don't you listen? Hung. The man was dragging her further away. She had to shout. I can't run. Hung took their punches, he took his fear head on, and faced the woman he loved so deeply. He cried back with tears. I can't run. If I take this step, I will tear apart our future with my own hands. I don't want to run again. I don't want to never see you again, even if this is an illusion, even if this is a dream. I won't run this time, Yanwei. Sometimes, people change at their route on the tiniest confrontation. Sometimes, people lingered on the same spot only because they hadn't taken that one little step. Hung took a step forward. When his foot was halfway over the cliff, he took one little step forward. And that brought him back to safety right before he would fall off into the abyss. Which allowed Yin Kong's hand to strike him on the back and knocked him several meters away. His head bumped into a set of stairs. Hung woke up after the hit. Though there was a big swollen bump on his head. He jumped up from the ground and looked around in confusion. It was the same dark path he was in. Pale white skeletons lay throughout the ground. Around him were people with their eyes closed and shivering. Aragorn was the only exception. His sword glowed in a silver light. His lips were moving as though he was conversing with something. On the other side, Gimli's hands were making the motion of pouring wine into his mouth while moving forward. Legolas was making the motion of shooting arrows and running. In front of these two was the cliff. Hung and Yin Kong met eyes, then charged at the two of them at the same time. They each grabbed a person then threw him backward. Gimli and Legolas went through Hung's experience. They stood up with a bump on the head. Legolas said with lingering fear. That was close. The mental energy of the dead controlled us. They showed us what we want or don't want to see the most. Then use it to lure you to jump off the cliff. Hung and Yin Kong looked at each other again and asked at the same time. Where's Cheng Xiao? Legolas could see further than anyone here due to having the eyes of an elf. He scanned around and found Cheng Xiao just one step away from the cliff. The man held out his arm with hesitation, but he pulled it back halfway. Then he wanted to take a step forward but retracted his foot. This went on for a few more times until he woke up by himself with a sigh. The others became curious to his experience. Cheng Xiao walked over to them. Hung asked. What did you see? That was weird. Cheng Xiao gave them a long face. I felt like buried in a land of warmth and tenderness. Beautiful ladies wavered around me. You can't imagine the exquisite beauties there were. Man, they were infinite times prettier than Miss China or Miss Earth. Too bad that I like the babyface lowly type more. Let me tell you, Hung. Yin Kong smacked his back with her foot then turned around and walked over to Aragorn. Help. Hung. I am going to fall. Hurry, this rock feels loose. They all came near Aragorn. The glow from the sword allowed them to see the green ghosts. That was when they realized they walked right through these ghosts. Aragorn didn't turn around to the group. He said to the spirit in front of him. I have told you my comrades will pass the trial. Now, give me your answer. Do you still remember your oath? Do you wish for a place of peace? Answer me. Aragorn swung his sword. The ghosts lowered their heads with respect as they saw it. He walked to the king of the dead. The dead king laughed. His laughter echoed through the hall. There was no word from him. He and his army began to fade with his laughter. Aragorn became anxious. He yelled. You have my word. Fight, and I will release you from this living death. What say you? Just then, the sounds of rolling rocks emerged. The group was standing by the cliff. Leading to the top from the cliff was a great hall. The doorway to the hall opened with the sound. Thousands of skulls poured down like a wave. By the looks of it, the skulls would bury them down the abyss. Aragorn had no time to question the ghosts further. He gave a yell and began to run. The group followed right behind Aragorn to the other side of the cave. Yet, a few steps in and the skulls had already drowned their legs. They gave their best to move forward. The skulls were getting more and more. They finally managed to run into a corridor before being buried. Following the corridor ahead, they soon escaped the cave. In front of them was a mountain. They had crossed the mountain. There were over 10 black ships on the river. A city by the shore was burning in fire. A black ship parked by the city. People were carrying goods onto the ship. Aragorn fell to his knees in despair. He seemed defeated. These black ships were probably forces of Mordor. Mordor's forces were showing their might while he failed to obtain his support. Such feeling would indeed put anyone into despair. The three members of Team China had no special feeling since they knew followed in the plot. A chilling wind swept by the silence. The dead king came out from the rocks. His voice sounded hollow. We fight. The last king of Gondor. Aragorn froze in shock until Gimli cried. He pulled himself up using the sword as support. Then he pointed to the black ships on the river. Our first fight? Annihilate the corsairs. The dead king charged toward the river. His army of ghosts followed after him. Ghosts had no form nor mass and were free from the bound of gravity. They ran down from the mountain. A green color surrounded the black ships. At the same time, the orc army was near Minas Tirith. The 100,000 army swept through the outposts in Gondor. When the defeated soldiers made it back to Minas Tirith and delivered the message, Denethor ordered his son, Faramir, to head out with their riders instead of defending inside the walls. Faramir was Boromir's younger brother. He lost multiple battles one after another while Boromir was still recuperating in Rohan. Not long ago, he led Frodo's party went ahead to Mordor, which led to the ring returning to Sauron. He blamed himself for giving the ring back to Sauron. It's sad but we have no control over this army. The one in command of the army is still Denethor. Zheng said to Gandalf. and to him, the riders of Gondar had much better armors than the riders of Rohan. However, they were miles apart in bravery, training, and other aspects. Losing this group wouldn't impact the battle by too much. This group totaled to 1,000. However, they had to charge at an army of 100,000 because it was the order of the steward. They couldn't not follow the order even if it was a suicide. Neither Zheng nor Lan attempted to change anything. Gandalf went to see Denethor multiple times. Yet, Denethor had gone mad. He couldn't listen to anyone's words. As it had been expected, 3 riders managed to come back after an hour. Faramir, who survived in the movie, died. The Mordor army was many times more than was portrayed in the movie after all. His death was determined when the wave of arrows rained down. Zheng and Gandalf sighed. Lan sent Zheng an image of the scan. The orcs, half-orcs, Uruk-hai, and trolls were not far from Minas Tirith and were approaching the city. They carried sieging weapons, catapults, siege towers, and battering rams, unlike the Uruk-hai of Isengard. This was a fully equipped army. The battle begins. Zheng could see the army with his eyes now. Looking down from the city, the orcs seemed endless. Now we just have to wait for our allies. Wait and see how many groups of allies will come.